3.
What? I already forgot what we were. Oh, yeah. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unknown Destination. My name is Justin, and everybody buckle your seatbelts because the seatbelt signs are on. We're about to take off. My name is Justin. This is Andrew. Andrew, you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Andrew, and I've been in the travel industry for a while now, a few years. And we thought we would just get this party started with who knows where we're going to go.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we came up with the name Unknown Destination. We have no idea where the conversation's going to go because we don't really have a plan. We never have. Like Andrew, I've been in the travel industry a few years, actually off and on for the past, 14 years? That's crazy. Mostly as a corporate travel agent, but also working in hotels as a room attendant and hopefully soon in hotels doing something else. But yeah. So that's about it for that. Now you kind of have an idea of who we are. So as far as what we're going to talk about, though, I don't really know.
Well, I thought that we could start off with kind of giving people a rundown of what we may go over in the show, or what we're kind of hoping to bring people in. Obviously, the conversations will probably end up travel related at some point. I'd like to try to give some people, I know a lot of people have been asking for travel tips during COVID, where they can go, how they can get there, what's allowed, what's not. So I figured we could do a little bit on that. Other than that, probably just anything and everything that's going on. We're going to try to stay out of politics. Everybody's probably long tired of it. I know I personally am. So I do have a question to get us started, though. Have you ever had coffee and energy drink and then leftover Arby's that you've left out overnight for breakfast?
Are you trying to ask me or warn me that you might need to run to the restroom multiple times during this recording?
No, this is for a friend. I've definitely never done this. But if I did, I would have ran to the bathroom probably.
Yeah, no.
Randomly.
First of all, I can't mix coffee and energy drinks within themselves because that's just too much. And
Gotcha.
just the coffee would probably be running to the bathroom. And leftover fast food is generally just disgusting.
Yeah, it was questionable. Even after heating it up, I still was really on the fence about putting it in my body. But here we are, and I mean, a friend is here. We are. I didn't do that. Yeah, so that's how my morning started. How was your morning so far?
It's been quiet. Oddly enough, you talked about avoiding politics, and I'm about to say that I sent my kid on a school bus, and even that in itself is a political statement now, which is crazy. But yeah, they have a lot of precautions, and luckily the school district he goes to, since they've been back for a month, have only had one case in the entire district. So comfortable with him going, but it's nice. He's in kindergarten. It's the first time where I've really had a quiet house in the last 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely I think a hot topic of all the schools reopening, and you see some like the ones that opened I guess in my opinion way too early. The ones that usually in the more southern states, you see Georgia that opened up all their schools pretty much before schools would normally have started in some areas, and then they just got flooded with the Rona. So but then you see other schools who seems like they're kind of taking the right precautions, and a lot of it's honestly on the kids too, understanding like I shouldn't say on the kids, on the parents to explain to it's hard to explain to children what's going on. But my mother works in school, and they haven't had any cases so far in their district. So fingers crossed that everything stays good on that front.
Yeah, same here. I mean, they didn't go back right away. It was about a month and a half into the school year, and they didn't even send the entire school there. So it was just certain grades that went back, and everything seems to be going fine so far. So fingers crossed it stays that way, because I got to be honest, virtual learning with a kindergartner was next to impossible. So
yeah, I was fortunate enough that my daughter is not of school age yet, so we decided to keep her out of the mess for right now, since we didn't have to elect to send her.
Yeah,
But
that was kind of my challenge with my son. His birthday is at the end of August, so he was already back a year, because he couldn't go when he was 5 because he was past that cutoff date. So he was basically, by the time he was actually back in the school, he was already 6. He would have been 7. So unfortunately, it wasn't an option for us, or I probably would have made that same decision.
right. Yeah, I know a lot of people had to make the tough calls between sending their kids to school or not, and with stimulus money running out, unemployment running out for some people it just wasn't in the cards to be able to take that time off, or maybe they went from a 1 income family to having to be 2 just because of job losses.
Right. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Here we are saying, titling this show Unknown Destination. We say we're going to try to avoid politics, but in this day and age, it's almost impossible to avoid the subject completely just because everything relates to it. And
unfortunately.
let's be honest, nothing we've said so far should be political, but it is.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge problem right now, is that I personally have deactivated most social medias just because I'm so tired of hearing the far right and the far left just bicker and point fingers when there's so many problems going on that I feel like we as a people really need to kind of pull together and just spread memes and dreams and not so much hate.
Memes and dreams. I like it.
Just to kind of give a scope, since we are more travel related, I just saw an article, it was either this morning or last night, about Delta, that they had reported over a $5 billion quarterly loss, just to help illustrate how rough the airlines are in shape right now, how bad it actually is. I also was reading that there was I think it's 1 in 7 jobs worldwide that are travel and tourism related. So a lot of people are out of work, and just because the unemployment number is, back to what the Great Depression was, does not mean that we are any better by any means.
That's interesting, because I think that's something else we can touch on, because we've both been affected directly by the travel industry getting hit so hard. For me, I had started with a new agency back in March, and I was there literally 1 week. So they had flown me down to Tampa, Florida for training, and I started on March 9th, and on March 11th was the first travel ban that went into effect for European countries related to COVID. So that day they came into the training room and they're like, hey, listen, you can stay the rest of the week, but we're going to send you home. Unfortunately, the position's not available right now until business picks back up. And on top of that, my wife had actually taken that month off of work. She used her vacation time, but then also had some unpaid time off so I could go to training. And she works in a hotel, so I get back and I find out that she doesn't have any hours at work either. So, that unemployment and that boost that was given through that stimulus plan really saved us, because I don't know where we would be if that wasn't there.
Yeah, because you really think about it, a lot of people that were already on a 2-income family, that have, multiple kids, or even if they don't have kids and maybe they live in an area that the cheapest place they could find was, already just barely within their means. Like you just don't know on people's situations, and having that money come through really, especially for families that were relying on a 2-income family, like that both lose their jobs to the same thing. That's huge.
Yeah, and you mentioned Delta posting a $5 billion loss. I mean,
this is just quarterly.
Or quarterly, yeah. That's nuts. Both of us have worked closely with Delta in the past. I think both of us have a very high view of Delta as being one of the most customer-focused airlines and one of the best to work with as a travel agent, because they just have better programs in place and they tend to be more friendly to you. And to see an airline that's so customer focused losing so much business is crazy. That's actually the airline that I flew on when I was going down and coming back. And even just the difference from my flight down there the weekend before to the weekend that I came back in March, there
You could
was
already see the precautions that they were taking.
they were already starting to take precautions. They had stopped serving snacks in the same way. They had already started giving like the little baggies out that already have a bottle of water in them. And then the amount of cleaning crews that you saw, every time you came off a flight, you saw a cleaning crew, like 10 people getting on that flight. Ironically, this is before we really discussed anything about masks or social distancing. So it was a very large group of people. Running on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
go ahead.
no, it was just crazy to see it. And, there was panic at the airport, to be 100% honest. You could just tell everybody was trying to get home because everybody was afraid they weren't going to be able to get home if they didn't get home right then. And, air travel's never completely stopped. There's never been a ban against it or anything like that because of COVID. But the airlines just don't have enough money coming in to be able to operate a full schedule. So, yeah, you're still allowed to travel and fly places, but as far as being able to find the flights, it's going to be a lot harder right now.
Yeah, and I would even say, to go a step further, that I don't think there hasn't been anything since the age of airline travel being so affordable and easy for the mass public that nothing to this extent has happened worldwide. Because if you think the last big thing we had was 9/11. And that really only affected U.S. in and out. That didn't necessarily affect the world. The world kind of took notice and made more precautions, but it wasn't like COVID where it just stopped everything. And even before that, or I guess in between, the next biggest thing that I could really think of was volcano. That had stopped pretty much all of travel in Europe there for a few months. But I don't think that there's been anything that's hit the travel world as hard as COVID has.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because you've only been in the industry a few years. I was working in the industry back in 2007, 2008 when the U.S. had a really bad recession. And oddly enough, this is significantly worse, but that was probably one of the worst times in travel. And right now, we're seeing a lot of regional carriers like Trans-States, and I can't think of some of the others that have gone under, but a lot of the ones that operate code shares have gone under in the past couple months. Back in 2008, when I was doing leisure travel, it seemed like twice a week you'd have an airline that just went under, and you would just have people be like, hey, how do I get home? I know ATA went under back then, and Hawaiian Airlines, and it was just dealing with a lot of people that were stuck. And unfortunately, we're in a situation now where the same thing is happening, but it's so much worse that even if they booked through a travel agency, they don't, like, they try to call and they can't get through because the travel agencies don't have enough income coming in to have people there. So they're operating on a shorter staff, but that shorter staff is legitimately busy because they're having to take care of people who are stuck places.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely noticed that before my own furlough, which was the end of March, because being kind of, I guess, on the front lines, as it were, seeing it kind of unfold worldwide before it hit the US, because I was seeing this happen November, December over in China, and we were having to rebook and cancel. Just US companies as a whole do a lot of business in China. It's very large. I mean, the next biggest economy to us. And a lot of people were diverting and going to Japan to do their visits, and then kind of seeing Japan and Korea close their borders there. That is kind of what sparked the panic, I guess, in myself as a travel agent, being like, I'm going to be out of work. This is going to destroy us, and kind of being that crazy guy with a sign that's holding it up and, wrath is coming, and like nobody's listening to him, but like nobody wanted to listen to that because it's one of those things that you don't think is going to happen in your lifetime. And, this random travel agent saying, in the next couple months, it's going to be here and it's going to be bad. Like no one wants to believe that kind of thing. So I don't blame people for not believing me, but I'm just saying that I called it, and everyone should always listen to me.
I think you have a point, though, that those of us who were in the travel industry did start seeing effects of this a lot sooner. Now, I had been out of work a few months within the industry, so I wasn't actively seeing it, at work, but obviously a good amount of my friends are in the travel industry, and including you were like, hey, this is going to be bad. And my wife, even being at a hotel, noticing that their bookings were starting to slow down. Now, granted, she works at a more corporate based hotel. We both worked in corporate travel. Those months of like November through about February tend to be kind of slow anyway. It picks up more as you get into the beginning of the year, but it was just crazy to see how things were changing. And I think a lot of people, really knew this was coming, last December, because even the slowness was slower, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we had a lot of I think I was from December up until my furlough, which was the very end of March. I was working 60 to 80-hour weeks, and that
Wow.
was all cancellations and
Yeah.
changes of people trying to get home.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, it's hard for travel agencies to justify the amount of staff that they have, even though, you have calls holding and you're trying to help as many people as you can, as fast as you can, with the just how the system is in place and how the airlines were kind of trying to fight it in the beginning. It
Yeah.
made it so hard to get people home, these business travelers that are freaking out because they're in, the heart of China, of where this terrible thing is supposedly spreading. And they're freaking out because they don't know how they're going to get home. And there's only I believe there were only 3 international airports in the US that were accepting travelers coming home from China, Detroit being one of them. I can't remember off the top of my head the other 2, but there were only 3 that were prepared to test people, quarantine them upon arrival. So yeah, it was crazy. And I was just reading a little bit more about that huge Delta loss, and because they're the first of the largest airlines to report earnings for the quarter. So we all know that United's terrible. So they'll probably
Yeah.
they'll come out way later saying that because they want to keep their stock price as high as possible until the very end. Excuse me. But they said this is kind of another testament to Delta, that though their losses are staggering, it says the company still has over 21 billion in reserve. So they're still good to get through the crisis. Hopefully, they're seeing, the daily cash burns that you're going to see. They retired over 400 aircraft, and they're not taking any new planes right now. So, but that is it. It's kind of good news because it shows that at least one of the major airlines, since we haven't heard anything from American or United yet, it shows that at least one of our major airlines has been responsible through what is the worst case scenario for the industry.
And I think that's definitely interesting. You mentioned that they were retiring a bunch of aircraft. I flew back home from Tampa on an MD-90, which is that's a very old aircraft to still be flying in the U.S. anyway. I want to say the one I flew on, I looked up, it went into service in 1987. So it was about time for it to be retired. And I got to be honest, you could tell, like, Delta does a very good job of keeping the interior of their planes cosmetically looking good. But, like, every other aircraft Delta has the in-flight entertainment screens and things like that, whereas the MD-90 was just a very basic seats. And it was supposed to continue flying from there. I believe it flew 2 more flights after I flew on it, and then that exact aircraft that I flew on was retired, which that was crazy to think about. But, you mentioned you mentioned United being crap and stuff, and I think a lot of us in the travel industry kind of agree that United's not the greatest. I think there's a lot of consumers that agree, but again, that is just our opinion. So United, please don't sue us.
Bring it on. That's it. I was reading. So they laid off. Actually, they didn't furlough. They laid off a ton of employees with no kind of notice. This was pretty early on. No kind of notice. They tried to cut people's severance. The CEO was he put out a statement saying that he wanted people, after the initial furloughs, he was asking people to quit and go to find other work, basically.
Yeah.
So, but in the fine print, if people were doing that, they were going to no longer be eligible for their basically any kind of tenure that they had with the company. So just, par for the course for United. But Yeah, just to give kind of give people, because you hear numbers like, billions of dollars. It's really hard to kind of put into like real people's terms, because $5.4 billion sounds like a lot of money that they lost, and it is.
It
But
is.
like if you compare it to the same quarter last year, they had a $1.5 billion profit. So you're thinking it's a eight like $7 to $8 billion swing for 3 months. So
Yeah,
they
that's
lost
insane.
$8 billion in comparison to last year in 3 months.
And you were touching on, some of the shady things United did. I have an article pulled up over here regarding Delta, and it looks like 18,000 of their employees, which is a fifth of their workforce before COVID, accepted buyouts and early retirement packages.
Yep.
So Delta was still able to put the cash forward to get people out that they were able to let, get their full early retirement and things like that. And they've done everything they can to keep as many employees on as possible. Both Delta actually and Southwest and American have tried to hold off furloughing people as long as possible. A lot of it's been based on, waiting for back to the stimulus, waiting on some sort of bailout. And I think that's something kind of important to touch on too. A lot of people see airline bailouts and relate it to the corporate bailouts like the banks back in 2008. And to me, it's just, yes, it's a corporate bailout, but for the most part, I think airlines in general, with the exception of maybe United, tend to actually put that money into keeping their people employed. I mean, they really are trying to keep them on staff so they're there, and travel will rebound eventually. Will it look different in the future? I don't know, but
Probably. I think
most
it'll probably
likely.
look a little bit different, but at the same time, I think we need to be looking at those companies that are doing the right thing, and
Yeah.
maybe actually as consumers, go where the loyalty lies, especially when it comes to our own safety, health, as well as how they take care of their own people. I think that's a huge thing. The companies that, even not just airlines, this kind of goes for all companies in my opinion, of the ones that just let people go, kind of in to benefit themselves instead of
Yeah.
the whole. um it was, I believe Mark Cuban was interviewed about that, and he had a really nice way of putting it, is that we really need to put a microscope under these companies that are really screwing over their people during something that no one can control. I've been lucky enough that I'm with a pretty good company that has kept my furlough going, and have even, for those that they did have to lay off, they've actually found work for them. So
Yeah.
that I mean, I've never worked for a company that has shown that much dedication to their staff. So very happy with that. Um, Now, I think we can touch a little bit on what you actually had mentioned. If the airline industry, if flying, if traveling will look different.
Yeah.
I think you were there was something about United Meeting Space,
Yes. So
what they were trying to do.
let me pull that up here. There was an article in Skift, which, for those of you who are unfamiliar, it's basically just a airline travel website. It's free, but you can sign up for Pro. They're completely, basically, donor based. But they came up with a subscription model where they're partnering with a company called Peerspace, which does meeting and event spaces, where they're trying to bundle flights with meeting space rentals. Now, uh, Andrew and I were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, and how it kind of just doesn't make sense to us, because the meeting and event industry has taken almost a bigger hit than the airline industry has at this point.
I would say it definitely has, because the meeting and events, you think that's mostly business related, trade shows. Personally, I got a good friend who was working in meetings and events, and he was furloughed. And the company basically had to do a 180 pivot to working with medical supplies instead of doing meetings and events, just so they could stay afloat. Because you think about it, the airlines are still going to have revenue, some kind of revenue coming in. I know some airlines are doing government contracts,
Yeah.
because people with the government are still having to travel, military contracts.
Yeah.
There's still flying. They're just not flying as much. Plus, they're able to get the bailouts that these meetings and events companies cannot, because they're being hoarded by red tape from Congress or whatever's going on. I know that there's a lot of businesses that are not seeing money because of it, which is neither here nor there. But I would say that meetings and events have been probably hit the hardest in the travel industry as a whole.
Yeah, and I'm just going to read this word.
Tourism.
I'm just going to read this word for word because it's an explanation of exactly how these packages work. So they're called Team Together, and what happens is a company can sign up for an annual subscription that includes travel from United and a meeting space from Peerspace. So if a company wants to gather a bunch of workers together, they can use Peerspace's concierge and United's agents to book quarterly meetings and arrange travels for employees for a bundled price. So to me, the only thing you're doing here is, as a corporate travel agent, you're kind of just pulling out what a travel agency would normally do.
Or you're cutting out the meeting and event team that would normally handle the company's meetings and events. The only benefit I can see of that is that they're combining the entire service in one. So the only benefit I can see from that is maybe peace of mind for the corporate companies that are going to use the service, because if anything, like, United is putting themselves on the line to guarantee the safety of that meeting, that it's going to be cleaned, that there's going to be nobody else inside or out that's not a part of the meeting. Whereas maybe if you go through a meetings and events, you don't know who the cleaning staff is that's coming in. Maybe you don't know if there's another meeting there beforehand.
True.
So I can see where they're coming from. I just don't know if people are going to trust airlines to, the people, especially when you think about delays, cancellations, customer service. Are you really going to want to go to United if your meeting space is not clean? Like, you're going to walk through the airport, get bounced around by gate agents who probably have zero training on this, because let's be serious. No company really does training that well. And the airlines are notorious for doing terrible training when not terrible training with things that are already in place, but new trainings. So this would be a new every new policy is terrible when it first comes in. No one knows what's going on. You get bounced around. Usually there's one manager who knows what the hell's going on, and that's it. Yeah, and then you're kind of like out of luck. So I don't really foresee people using this option too much, as opposed to booking a meeting space at the Radisson or at the Fairmont. Like, I think they're gonna still trust the hotels because that's what they do. That's usually they have a banquet hall or something that is just for that. But I guess we'll see. I haven't heard of any other airline trying to do something like this, or any other company that's tried to dip their toes into meetings and events. More power to them if it works.
So looking at this, there's an example package here, and so a company would pay $5,000 a month to include 4 company meetings, 8 company social events, because we should be doing that right now, 18 small team meetings, 24 private workspaces, 60 round-trip domestic flights, 24 United Club passes, and 24 United Economy Plus upgrades, plus
this
4
is a month?
Yeah, plus 4 United Club Lounge memberships. Now, reading that and knowing how much it would normally cost for them to have a United Club membership and things like that, that's actually not a bad price for everything that's included. But
you're hitting such a small percentage of companies that can even afford to do that right now, though. You're looking at Google, Microsoft, like probably maybe Triple M, maybe some of the other tech companies, but that's it. And like, the tech companies are working remote. Nobody's going to meetings right now. Like, the market you're trying to hit is huge tech, and no huge tech or pharmaceuticals. None of them are traveling right now. And the only meetings you're going to hit are going to be the ones that are related to COVID. And they probably have to go to specific places for these meetings. They're not allowed to go through United.
And, these huge tech companies, not only are they working remotely from now, a lot of them have already made the commitment to do their meetings and stuff remotely for the foreseeable future. Like, they've found programs that work. They've developed platforms that work, or they're using Zoom, and they found that works just as well. So they're saving a crap ton of money by not having to travel. And from what I see from this, first of all, let me just touch on little areas of this. The United Club Lounge passes. I'd say 90% of the companies that I've booked for have some sort of credit card that they're using for their employees that already gives them United Club access.
Yep.
Round trip domestic flights, if you get a group booking for people, you're probably going to get cheaper rates than that anyway. The private workspaces, why do you need a private workspace if you have a company? That's what your office is. It just doesn't make that much sense. And the United Economy Plus upgrades, most larger corporations have contracts with United if they want their customers or their clients to be able to be in Economy Plus, where they have waivers in place for that. They can already do it.
Yeah, they're offering a lot of stuff that sounds great, but it's just fluff. Like what they're actually offering is the actual meeting spaces, but for how that's not like they're definitely, if they could use all of those every month, they're getting their money's worth. Absolutely. But I don't see a company that's going to be able to even do that. Even like Facebook or any of these companies, they're not going to, how many meetings total was that? Around 50 that you had said per month?
Let's see, 18 small team meetings. So those aren't even large spaces. Those would be like, your little tiny town halls, 4 large company meetings and 8 company social events. So
that's 30. So they're expecting these companies to have one a day somewhere in the world. That's insane. Especially when travel is restricted to everywhere. They're expecting these people to, and they're what they're doing is they're trying to force people to fly United with these. They're trying to get companies to buy into flying United. Yeah, which is actually really smart, because if any of these companies do, then they're going to have the loyalty rewards and all the statuses. True. And then the employees will say, well, we should stick with United because I get my free upgrades now.
I think in addition to that, a lot of this is a Hail Mary of where United can come in and get that $5,000 a month, and they're relying on that $5,000 to make up for the flights that they're not selling. It's really just about that subscription.
That cash flow.
And that's not, they got to do what they can do right now. I don't blame them for making the decision. It's just, I don't think it was the smartest partnership they could have made at this point in time.
Yeah, it just, maybe it's not costing them anything. Maybe it's just like a mutual, like, let's try this kind of situation. I don't know if it's just kind of like they partnered up just to try something. In which case it would be fine. But if they spent anything into trying to do this, which they're going to have to, if they want, they're going to have to spend money to train their staff to be able to help people with this, unless they're planning on just passing the buck to whatever this other company is that you said that they're going through. But then you're just still having a middleman. It doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, it looks like Peerspace, the company they've partnered with, they've been around since 2014. They've raised $37 million in venture capital since then, which that's impressive. But as of right now, they're only in 30 metro areas in the U.S. They were only in 10 back in 2018, so they have seen some rapid growth. But it almost sounds like they're just like, it's still the hotel spaces and things like that. They're just contracting out, selling the space for the hotel. So you're kind of just creating another middleman and having it all in one place. And yet again, that's what a travel agency does for you. So
yeah, and I was just thinking about it too. They're not going to be building any of these meeting spaces. So more than likely, all they're going to do is be renting out, the Marriott's meeting space. But it's going to be, now they're going to have to go through this other company that goes through the Marriott that goes through your company. Like it's literally adding more work. If anything goes wrong.
And here's the thing. Now, first of all, obviously we're both going to be a little biased, but if you're booking anything that's difficult, or if you're doing corporate travel, I definitely recommend using a travel agent, because we have the experience to know what to say to people to get things done. But something like this, where they're just dabbling into it, I would much rather be working directly with the hotel or meeting space and not having that extra middleman, because that extra middleman's not going to be able to do anything for you. You're just going to, a lot of times, say you book through a travel agency and we make a reservation for you for an airline. If you call the airline and they change something for you, a lot of times we can't get into that booking anymore. So you just eliminated one of the people that can work on that for you. This is kind of the same situation where you're running that risk of making things way more difficult on yourself if you have problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just I don't see why anyone would want to do that. As for using a travel agent, I think that anytime, especially internationally, I would use I would not use myself because I would want to use somebody who is stateside for when something goes terribly wrong,
right.
Which, unless you're the luckiest person ever, if you go international, something's going to come up where you wish you could get a hold of somebody that was not in the country that you're in.
So you brought that up, so let's go there. Back when we were working together at the same agency, Andrew here took a trip and ran into some problems.
Well, there's this thing that we have where it's called I almost die on every vacation I've ever taken. So we're gonna have to be a little bit more specific. Are we talking about going to the Amazon, or Iceland?
We're talking Iceland, because you called me to help you find a hotel because I was at work that day.
That's right.
It was a challenge.
Yeah, so this actually proves right into that point of having somebody stateside, because first off, if you don't have an international phone, or even if you do, maybe you don't want to be paying hundreds of dollars to try to rearrange your travel because something unforeseen came up. So just long story short is that I went to Iceland with my child and wife at the time, and we ran into some problems while we were trekking through the mountains. It was supposed to be a beautiful few days. We had like a 4 to 5 day trek planned. We got 10 miles into the hike. It was gorgeous. We were getting ready to set up camp, and the caretaker at this kind of like halfway house just up in the mountains that where everybody would camp at told us, if you guys have energy, you should keep going till you get to the next checkpoint, because there's a big storm coming that's going to rip apart your tent. So we begrudgingly took off, and not even 5 minutes into our continued trek, a huge ice storm came blowing through. We ended up being saved by the loveliest French couple who I gave my baby to willingly because I was very tired, and he carried her for about 4 miles. So we ended up having to they wouldn't let anybody trek for the rest of the time. Because of the storm, they sent a rescue bus, which was one of probably the weirdest things I'll ever say or see, that literally this bus could just go through rivers. And there was probably 4 or 5 of us that were on it that they came out to rescue. So we get back to Reykjavik, and we were not planning on being in Reykjavik at all. So we're looking around. I'm trying to find hotels. It's getting later. Luckily, I had Justin, who was still at work because of the time difference, and we were able to find me a hotel that was reasonable, and we ended up just having a great rest of the time walking around Reykjavik for the next 4 days. But
let's be clear, like, reasonable hotel in Iceland, reasonable is a relative term. It's still surprisingly expensive, especially the time you were there was one of their busier travel times. So
we ended up being there during a festival. There was a festival coming that weekend. So we ended up, it was very hard to find a hotel, and we ended up finding one. I wanted to say it was like $250 or $300 a night. And if we wanted to be right in downtown, there was only one hotel property available. This was when I was back working with Carlson Vaughanley Travel. And there was one hotel. It was a Radisson Blue, which they're partners with. So I was like, perfect, I'm just going to go there. It was $900 a night. And I'm not doing that. I would rather sleep on the street. So,
and for those of you who don't know, Radisson Blue is like Radisson's top level property. They're by far their nicest hotels. Just to give you a relation, there's one in downtown Chicago, and even working for Carlson Vaughanley with a Carlson discount, because Carlson owned Radisson at the time, they don't anymore. It was still $400 or $500 a night, even in Chicago. So, high-end hotel, and that was honestly at the time that was the only one I could find at first with availability. I was messaging Andrew back and forth on, I think we were using Facebook Messenger because God only knows how much it would have cost to make a phone call.
Yeah, that was another thing is I had to find somewhere that had Wi-Fi that they would allow me to use. So luckily, Iceland is one of the nicest countries you could ever possibly visit. So we were not worried at all during our stay there. It's one of the lowest crime rates kind of worldwide, mostly because you can't really get away with anything. You're on an island that most of it is uninhabited. So,
and yet, though, your favorite food while you was there were the French fries that you kept talking about.
Yeah, those were some of the best I've ever had.
Hey, I know food's expensive there anyway, though, just because they have to, import pretty much everything.
Yeah, that's I've actually had quite a few friends reach out that have wanted me to set up some travel for them for Iceland. Iceland is definitely tourism, kind of the hot spot of where people want to go, mostly because of the Blue Lagoon, which personally I don't recommend people go there. It's a tourist trap. They have hot springs everywhere that you don't need to go in with 800 dirty, old men. You could take a half an hour bus out into the mountains, and that's what we did, and it was amazing.
Yeah, and as far as traveling to Iceland, since we're talking about it, it's one of the more inexpensive places to actually fly to. Obviously, it's not as inexpensive as it was when WoW Airlines was still around, but if you flew there on WoW, you might have gotten stuck when they went bankrupt. So, but what is it? Is it Iceland Air that you flew on?
Yep, yeah, I flew on Iceland Air. They had just opened up a nonstop route from Chicago to Reykjavik, or to not Reykjavik. Their main airport there. That's losing my mind. I thought either way, they had just opened up the they had just opened up the nonstop route there. It was only about a 6.5 hour flight, so not bad at all.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's very reasonable too for where you're going. I want to say we spent, I know it was under $500 a ticket round trip.
That's not bad at all.
And for it being a nonstop, not bad at all.
And just to give everybody,
go ahead.
I was going to just give everybody an idea in relation to that 500 to 600 to fly from where I'm at in St. Louis to like New York. You could be paying that for a flight. So for an international flight, that's amazing. And Iceland's one of those funny places too, where your actual base ticket price is pretty commonly less than your taxes.
Yeah, that actually was very true. I want to say that our ticket price was only about 100 to 125, and then taxes were the rest of it. So you can't even really get much better than that because your taxes are always going to be the same for that kind of routing for international tickets.
Yep.
You could technically have a quote unquote free ticket from an airline, and then when you go to use it, you're paying $1,000 in taxes. Very easy to do international, especially going to hot destinations in Europe. Or even Asia. So that's something you always want to be wary of when you quote unquote win something. Make sure that before you hit that purchase button. Kind of to switch gears here. They because I know a lot of people are big cruise enthusiasts, and I wanted to say that I saw that there was they just extended the CDC no sail order until November 1st. They're going to be canceling more, and it looks like even into 2021 they're going to be canceling cruises. So I saw probably within the past 4 months or so, a lot of cruises, because they have no money coming in, they're trying to offer deals for 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
I personally would not be taking advantage of any of those deals right now because the only reason they're doing it, and all of those are non-refundables. It's not like what the airlines are doing where they're allowing, free changes, free blah, blah, blah. These like Carnival, like they're out for blood right now. They can, feel themselves going under, and they're trying to get that cash flow any way they can. So I personally would stay away from cruises for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, yes, they're all desperate for things. Save it cruises from 70 per person per day. First of all, I don't have a very high opinion of Carnival as it is anyway. To me, they're kind of the discount. How do I say it? The Spirit Airlines of cruise lines?
Yeah, they're like the what is it? The Bali World.
Yeah.
They're the Bali world of cruises.
And I know people who have had great experiences on Carnival and really enjoyed their time, but a lot of those people who have had a good time on Carnival haven't gotten to experience cruises on Royal Caribbean or Norwegian or some of the
Viking.
higher end cruise lines.
Yeah, I would say if you want to stick with one of those, you might still be safe. If you're on one of the, I guess higher class cruises,
Yeah.
your Vikings or Norwegian, the ones that are only have a max capacity of maybe 50 to 100 to begin with.
Right.
But again, you're going to be paying for that. There's a reason why they're better.
And
You get
keep
what
in
you pay
mind,
for.
right now with these cruise lines, they don't know where they're going to be next year. I mean, they've lost a lot of business. They had to refund a lot of people who were on these cruises just because
They've
so
lost
many people.
routings.
Yeah, and a lot of people did get COVID because honestly, a cruise is an incubator for any type of illness that's found on board. I mean, you're just in such close quarters with everybody. Everybody's going to the same places. It. I don't think there's a legitimately safe way to cruise anytime soon until there's some sort of vaccine for COVID because
Right. Yeah. And
you're
we're
too
looking at,
close.
at least another year out for
Yeah,
that. So you're probably going to be looking at very heavy travel restrictions. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there just weren't, if the cruise industry just died for
same.
the foreseeable future, because I don't see people wanting to get on cruises. Even the people that
No.
enjoyed cruises, and even if you don't think COVID's a thing and you're that dumb, I still even those people I think will be wary about spending, a couple $1,000s on a cruise, even if, Carnival, you can only get so cheap. And
Right.
I guess if you, and they're not going to be sailing if they're losing money. So
Yeah.
it's that'll never happen.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, and let's bring that back into airlines a little bit. As you mentioned, U.S. carriers right now, your tickets are pretty safe as far as anytime you need to make a change or something because of COVID, you're going to be able to change your ticket. Not every airline is refunding. There were some government orders that were in place where they had to, but the further out that you're booking right now, that's obviously not going to be the case. But if you're traveling internationally, be really careful. Not every international airline is honoring any of that. So there might be a flight where if you book it and say you come down with COVID, you're just out of luck. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. I know prices are incredibly cheap right now to travel, but there's a reason for that. They desperately need people to travel, but should you really be traveling? I mean, I'll let everybody make their own decision up on that, whether they need to be traveling right now or not. But low prices are low for a reason.
Yeah, and I think that it's fine to travel. There's just, you have to take the precautions that make sense. Like, I've known, a lot of responsible people that have traveled and they've done everything that they're supposed to, and they come back and they do everything they're supposed to when they come back. The quarantines that are in place, and um, it's they're no worse for it. But then you just got to be, I guess, vigilant about some of these places that you're visiting, and just making sure
Exactly.
you're doing the right things. I was actually curious on where U.S. People were allowed to travel. It looks like a lot of places are still open. It's just that they're requiring health passes, temporary quarantines. Um, there's only a few countries that are just straight up not allowing Americans in. I believe Japan is one of them, but that's not surprising because
No.
Japan was one of the first countries to actually close their borders completely, and they kind of handled COVID in one of the best ways that we've seen. Probably only, like, I would probably say second to maybe New Zealand, because I think New Zealand is one of the first countries that fully eradicated it.
Right.
Um, which I don't know if they probably still have their borders closed as well. Yeah, I think they do. I don't see anything in here on New Zealand. So
Yeah, it looks like everything I'm seeing, even the countries that are marked as do not travel by the CDC, you can still travel to these places. It's just you have a combination of either you have to have a COVID-19 test taken up on arrival. And what happens in most cases like that is you take the COVID test and then you go to your hotel and you have to stay in your hotel till you get your results. Usually that's within 72 hours because somehow there's faster testing in every other country right now.
Yeah, I know that's what I was seeing too when I was looking through. I'm like, that's because a couple countries it said that you have to have a negative COVID test upon arrival, and then there's also a special kind of test that they're doing at the airport that has real time
Yeah.
results.
Yeah.
So I don't know why we don't have those. But I guess that's the way that's just sometimes how it is. So if anybody wants to know more about certain countries too, please let us know, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into maybe if you really are trying to get somewhere. Maybe you've been thinking about trying to go somewhere during this. Maybe you got time off work because you've been furloughed, and you think, hey, maybe I can get away to somewhere right now. Maybe I can sneak away from the States for a bit. I know I have thought about it, but definitely let us know, and we can try to help you out on the next episode here.
Yeah, and I think that leads into something we can just kind of say for our future episodes. The plan right now is to upload both video and audio of the podcast, most likely the audio first with the video coming a few days later. Anchor's going to be hosting it for us, and with Anchor, they have a feature where you can actually leave us a message or like a voicemail, and then we can play that back on the podcast, listen to your question, and answer it that way. So I will make sure that link is available in both the audio and video version. So if you have any type of question that's travel related or just want to say something, that option's there for you to do, so we can get you involved in the conversation and find out, what you guys want to know.
Yep, absolutely. That gives us a little bit of a jumping off point on kind of the content that you guys are looking for. Because I assume that if you stuck with us so far, that you are interested in travel, staying up to date, love our voices. One of those three things, probably the first two, I would assume. But if there is anything that you find interesting, that maybe you want someone else's opinion on, we can do that as well.
Yeah, and if you love our voices, you may not want to watch the video version. I'll apologize in advance, but
built for radio. That's what I've been told. Just built different.
Yeah, but other than that, I think that's about it for this week. I think we've covered quite a few topics, and if you're listening this long, you were in it for the long haul and you're obviously interested, but I can't see myself sitting down listening much longer than this, so I think we'll wrap it up there.
All right. So from Justin and myself, thanks for coming with us on our unknown destination trip.
All right. I'll see you guys next time.
Have a good one.